So in terms of cool stuff, what was the? Let's talk about cool things you saw. What was going on there the first couple days?
Well, so the new sort of competition schedule of everybody goes Thursday through Sunday was a lot harder on the athletes than I think they expected it to be. Some of the athletes that I was talking to, they were saying at the end of last year's games, I'm talking like top 10 guys. At the end of last year's games, they're like, I kind of walked away with it. It was fine. Yeah. This year, they're like, we're fucked. Yeah. Like my legs are destroyed. My arms are just like we're just fucked.
Just wrecked. Yeah.
And so, the competition schedule I think is really good. They did a good job of utilizing the athletes' time and kind of like putting together these events and really stacking in a ton of events in the course of that 4 days. I think they did 13 total scored events.
Yeah, they've done 13 for a little while here, at least if you combine the half events together. Yeah. Why lucky number 13 for the event?
It's usually 13 and if you split it to like the smaller events, they'll do like 15 scored events, but some of them are like 50 pointers.
It's like 1,300
It tends to be 1,300 points. And I think it's just a logistics thing. If you look at how they split up the events.
But why not 12 or 14? Why stick it on 13 there?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I know that just looking at the schedule, it makes sense what they were doing. They did 3 events on Wednesday. They did 4 events on Thursday, and then they started early on Friday. I think they did 4 events again on Friday, and then another 4 events on Saturday, and 3 events on. So like they did a fuck ton. It was crazy, like the amount of. And so some of the things that I was hearing was like they had to be really careful. The athletes had to be really careful to be able to recover Thursday night to Friday morning because it was a really short turnaround. Like it was a less than 12-hour turnaround. To when they had to check back in to when their event finished on Thursday night. So like, one of the cool things we saw was they were actually being tested across 4 days on like a lot of different shit. And it was really awesome, actually. The events I thought in general were really good. Yeah. Overall, it was an exciting show to watch, especially the very last event. Yeah. Castro, if there's one thing that he understands, it's how to program races. So he does a really good job of building in these like intense, like competitive moments within workouts.
Yeah, when the final event when the final event was announced, I remember all kind of left scratching our heads a little bit. We're kind of like, it seems kind of a weird final event. It seems very brief, and then very quickly it began to emerge. Oh, this is all to cultivate, an exciting finish, much like the kettlebell deadlift, whatever. And sure enough, it fucking worked in the women's competition. Holy shit!
So speaking of which, thing that like me watching as a spectator is not as into it as all of you, obviously. One thing that I thought of that like was, I don't know, it was kind of weird to me watching other sports or whatever, is that like the women's race, like at the end, like was fucking neck and neck. It was exciting. I was like into it. Everyone was into it. The whole like living room was shouting and like cheering and etc. And then the men's thing following was just like, cool. So we're just gonna watch this event. We know who wins, etc. Like, are there thoughts about like maybe like doing what you do on like towards the end of an NFL season when certain games that were supposed to be televised are maybe not
like
super, kick them, switch it around, maybe make the women's final like the final?
Yeah, that's a good point. You're 100% right. I think what they had done was, I don't know if they really thought it through to the point of like, oh man, Matt Fraser's going to dominate again this year. But I think what they had done was they alternated which division started first each day. Okay. And it just happened that the women started first on Sunday. Yeah. So the women did all their, like on the first event, the women went first and then the men went second. And same thing on the second event on Sunday, women went first. And so they just happened to be going before it. But the way they've like fixed that in the past is they'll have like let's say there's 4 total heats. They'll have the first 3 heat of women go, and then the first 3 heat of men go, and then the last heat of women, last heat of men. So they end up like kind of taking the last most important heats and they put them last. And I think they kind of should have done that. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it is such like a logistical nightmare for them to fucking create the games that I think they're just over moving shit around.
And
that much.
But let's talk for a second about that women's final, because holy shit, that was exciting.
It was
to watch.
beautiful.
It was so good. And I mean, just you know, we knew it could not possibly have been closer and more exciting and leaving you more in a place of anticipation for that final announcement of who won. Because even if you were paying very, very, very close attention to the point spread, you could only, until the words came out of Castro's mouth, only have a pretty good indication as to who it was who was going to win. You know, I mean, you had Tia, who was Tia collapsed, or not collapsed, but finished like exactly what shouldn't have happened, what she couldn't let happen on the previous event happened, which is she finished low, Kara finished high, and a bunch of people crossed the line in between. So she lost all these fucking points. She had a 6-point lead over Kara going into that final event, which is like literally a one-place finish. Yeah, exactly. So it's like you let one person come between them and they're gone. So then, you know, I mean, but it looked like she was so safe. She was consistently ahead of Kara the entire workout, heading down with the, which was, you know, very exciting, but still. And then it was just seemed like, okay, and here we're about to crown just a few more seconds before she crowned on the last rep. She lunges across, her elbows break. Finally, she just can't hold it up any longer, gets no rep, takes a step back. Kara steps to her level. They step across at the exact same moment. They both charge across, and you can see clearly Kara get it first. And so I remember when we were watching it, I leapt out of my chair, and I was just like, Kara beat her.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God.
And then that's the thing, is like they finished only like a quarter of a second apart, but then you just don't know, because it's just like, I don't think
had Kara beat her by 2 seconds, maybe that would have been enough time for another person to get
If any person from a previous heat had finished between those 2 times, then Kara would be the CrossFit Games champion. And so it's just, you're like, I don't think that could have happened, right? Were those the fastest times overall? Whatever. And all of a sudden Castro's like, and your winner is, and you're like, ah!
Yeah. There's actually even more levels to this, right? There's more that added tension to it. It wasn't just like, yes, there was a 6-point gap. Yes, Tia had to just finish ahead of her and she would lock it up. Yes, if Kara finished ahead of her, well ahead of her, it would have been over. But there's even more, right? So in 2015, when the last time they had parallel handstand push-ups and those heavy kettlebells in the finals, Tia took 2nd or 4th overall in that workout, and Kara took 32nd.
Oh, yeah.
So it was like, I remember texting Chase. I was like, I don't know what that's all about. I remember texting Chase, and I was like, Chase, could you look back? Like no internet was working or anything like that. So I was like, Chase, could you look back and just look at the leaderboard and just tell me what this difference was? And he was like, holy shit, like, I can't believe this, like, this difference is crazy. She has no chance. And I was like, wow, even if Kara Webb improved by massive margins, she would still stand no chance at winning.
But wasn't 15 the year she had her big collapse, though?
That was 14.
14, okay.
And then, well, actually, no.
Well, no, the Murph. Yeah, the Murph collapse.
So she was talking about the total collapse.
No, I'm talking about her big, like, carried out on a stretcher moment.
Even further, there was some drama surrounding Kara Webb's finish in the second to last event with the overhead squats.
Oh, right.
Because her judge allowed her to finish with 3 reps remaining.
Yes.
And she got dinged 6 seconds. Which is a fair number because they based it off of how long her last 3 reps took. But there's a chance that if she had just finished that workout, she would have had enough points to win.
Oh, really? So wait. So that would be interesting.
By the end of it, she only lost by 2 points. Out of 1,300 possible points, she lost by 2.
Okay, if she had gone slightly faster than 6 seconds for that,
let's say if she completed her last 3 reps in 4 seconds. I wonder if was there enough grouping around that finish that she would have actually gathered spots.
Yeah, because she would have been like 2nd instead of 4th.
Okay.
And that's like an 8-point
so everyone was crossing at
whatever.
the same time.
Yeah, like people were crossing around the same time.
So the margins were that narrow.
In that final heat, people were crossing around the same time. There's maybe 3 people that finished around that time. And if she had just...
So that one asshole judge may have cost her.
But at the same time, so here's another thing, right? So if you go yet further back, during the snatch event, Alessandra Pacelli snatched 207 or something like that. But because her bar was like misloaded, and by misloaded it just means it was uneven. It was 207 pounds. It was just uneven. She couldn't take first, so her previous attempt is what counted, and Kara Webb got bumped to first place in that event. So it's like there's a lot of like give and take with Kara's points over the course of the weekend. I think she ended up where she belonged, but I mean, you're talking about the smallest fucking margin.
I mean, she won by 2 points. They essentially tied at the end
2
of
points
all those events.
Over 1,300 possible points. That's nothing.
That is nothing. Oh man, and it's like she has waited. Kara has waited. Like I mean, like Tia's been here for what 3 years now, but Kara has waited like 6 years for everything to align and for nothing to go wrong, and it finally happens. 2 points shy of Tia. There, it was a really, and it was an awesome fucking finish to all that stuff. And I was honestly glad that it was Tia. I don't even know why, but just that was my gut was just like I'm glad that it was Tia that won instead of Kara. But I don't know why. But I like Tia.
I mean, I like them both. They're cool too. But I picked Tia because I think that she should have won in 2015.
Yeah,
and it was a scoring error that
because
took her
of the pegboard scoring.
And then what's that?
Fake news.
Chase is a Katrin apologist.
Oh, okay.
And in 2016, Tia was the only person who finished all the events. So there's no reward for doing that, obviously, but there maybe should be. Right?
Remind me real quick what the scoring error was. I kind of think
in 2015, there was no way of them knowing that none of the women would be able to do the pegboard. And so when only 12 women or 11 women were able to do a single rep, everyone else tied for 12th instead of tying for last. So they tied for 12th for doing zero work.
And some of them chose to do
and
zero
some
work.
of them chose to do zero work. So there's you can watch it, Sarah Sigmundsdottir, Tia Claire Toomey, they're
fighting the whole time.
the pegboard and getting a rep or two. And Katrin is waiting and resting for the final event. And that point difference is what, like, if she had placed any low, if like one other person had done a pegboard, Tia would have won. But if they had just scored it where like, hey, if you get a 0, you don't get 12th place, you get last place, then it would have changed the podium completely.
If everyone had gotten like last place point arrangements, but and would she have even known that going into that? Would they have known how the scoring?
They 100%
Ben
knew.
Bergeron
Ben Bergeron told Katrin, no one has gotten like the lowest you'll get here is 12th, or the lowest you'll get here is 10th. So there's no point to try it.
Gotcha. He's a crafty one.
He's smart, yeah. Obviously,
man.
He's obviously doing something right. I mean, his athletes won last year. This year, Katrin had a really phenomenal second half of the competition. She still had she had holes in her game where she's always had holes in her game, and the problem is, as she's like shoring up other holes in her game, like other places where she can be stronger, these weaknesses of hers are being overtaken by other people who are better. So she's always had issues with upper body pulling, whether it's legless rope climbs, muscle ups, pegboard. Those are all the same problem for her. And so when the Amanda 45 workout came out, which was like all those muscle ups, all the squat snatches, she just wasn't able to hang. Not that she's not good, she crushed the workout. She just wasn't able to hang with the top 20 CrossFit Games athletes. And the games today are a completely different beast than they were even last year, much less 3 years ago. And so having one poor finish is impossible to overcome.
What do you mean by that? In that it's a different beast than even last year? Like in what way?
Last year on the women's side, it was a close race. It was definitely a close race. On the men's side, Matt destroyed everybody. Right? He would have had the same margin of victory this year if the deadlift was a snatch instead of the deadlift last year. You know what I mean? So the reason why his margin of victory was lower is because they chose to do deadlift, and that's just not something that he excels at. So the margins of error are like very, very slim, and every year they get more and more slim. Like it's kind of like an arms race. Like how good Matt is and how good Katrin is are pushing these athletes to get better and better and better each year. And there's a couple things to notice from that, but the main thing to notice from that, at least for this point, is that the margins that you're allowed to slip are no longer the same size. Like, so look at Rich Froning, for example. Every year Rich Froning won, he had to claw back. Like every year they always relied on him on Sunday to win every event in order to win. And like, just wrap your brain around that. He was always the favorite to win, but he was never ever safe.
Yeah, he had he had lower finishes than one could get away with today, is what you're saying.
He would never be able to do what he did, placing the way that he did.
Interesting.
And every year he had a low placing.
Yeah.
The only year that he was like truly like untouchable was probably 2011.
Yeah.
And so it's like there's no more margin of error.
Yeah.
You have to be.
Is that what we're
proficient.
seeing happen to an athlete like Josh Bridges, who is slipping, or who is he's kind of been performing at that same level, but is now kind of falling off?
Possibly. Josh Bridges was sick the first few days of the game, so like basically through Friday or Saturday he was like not able to hold any food down.
Gotcha.
So we saw a couple flashes of his capacity, especially on like the heavy 17.5 event. And kind of like the second to last event, all those overhead squats and stuff. Like we saw his abilities starting to shine through, but he wasn't the athlete that he was prepared to be that week. He was just really sick.
Word.
But yeah, that's exactly what's going on. That's what happened to Katrin this year. She still came back for 5th place. Is that right, Chase?
No, she was. No, 5th. You're right.
So she still came back for a 5th place finish, and she had like a 22nd and a 24th place finish. So she was really fucking good across the board.
Arguably performed better than Froning did in certain years that he won.
Right. 100%.
Yeah.
And so
finishes.
But it's just the level of competition is starting to like come up, and that's the nature of the game, right? So I was talking to Fikowski before the game started, and he was saying,
was he like super chill? What did he smell like?
He smelled like sandalwood. It was really nice. A true man.
He smelled like maple syrup, is what he smelled like. Canadian tall drink of water.
And so I was chatting with Fikowski, and we were talking about his approach going into the games, and he was telling me last year, all throughout the Open into regionals, he knew that he was going to make the games. He just he was like, I feel on a different level compared to my competitors, and he proved it at regionals last year and this year as well. But so going into the games last year, he was like, looking at this field of competitors, the only two men who can beat me are Matt Frazier and maybe Ben Smith. Like he looked at the competitors from 2015, he looked at the people who qualified in 2016, and he said the only men that can beat me are Matt Frazier and Ben Smith. And he didn't count Patrick Vellner because Patrick Vellner's scores ended up getting higher than his because of someone else's fuck up. Right? So because BKG walked across the finish line instead of running across the finish line, Patrick Vellner earned those extra 4 points.
Interesting.
So it's like, if you look at the way that the games are played, it's a points game. And so when I was talking to Brant about his approach this year, he said the exact same thing. He said, I was worried earlier this year because I was looking at everyone that I was going to compete against, and I knew that the only person that was fitter than me is Matt Frazier. It's like looking at the quality of athletes that are qualifying, they can't beat me. Matt can beat me. He goes, but for a while, he's like, I kept telling myself that. I kept thinking to myself, Matt's fitter than me. This is going to be, I don't think I can beat him. He goes, and then I realized that it doesn't matter that he's fitter than me. What matters is that I might be able to earn more points than him. And so that's the attitude you have to have. Now, that didn't happen, but that's the game. The game is earning points. And so
you never, and the other thing is, especially as margins get narrower and narrower, I mean, not like that Matt won by a narrow margin by any stretch, but as margins get narrower and narrower, some sort of slip up or fuck up or something like that can allow someone to easily step past someone who might, in some objective sense, be fitter than them. Can kind of take a big step past so you kind of have to have a, not just at that capacity, but also a perfect performance.
And there were places, exactly, and and that's one of the things that, my analysis before the games was 3 things have to happen for Matt Frazier to lose. Someone has to be able to win multiple events. That same person has to stay within a couple places of him on everything else. And then the off chance that Frazier fucks up somewhere, that same person has to capitalize and win that event. So there's a big gap. And Fikowski was able to do 2 of those things. Right? He stayed with him on most of the events, and he was able to win a couple events. The problem was no one expected that Matt probably wouldn't fuck up, and the only place where he did fuck up, George Sanchez is the one that capitalized on it and took the win. So
which event's that?
That was the assault banger.
Okay, right.
And so like there is a possibility there. It's just such a small fucking window.
I missed the banger thing because I was because there was one of the days I couldn't watch, but someone had told me that Sanchez did how many calories in how many seconds?
40 calories on the assault bike
in 26 seconds.
26 seconds.
Jesus Christ!
That's one Tabata round.
He finished so quickly that we thought he cheated.
Yeah.
We're like, the judge fucked up. They let him off the thing, and he was just
pulled
like
a Kara.
He was like 6 to 8 feet down the banger before the next person got onto it.
Yeah, I can't, like, as someone who's on an assault bike a few times a week, generally spending about a minute to row to do 20 calories.
Yeah,
as my warm up. The idea of in a third of that time doing 40, I just don't know what that would even look like. Like, how is that possible?
Brutality is what it is. I mean, you're talking about he's maxing out the wattage on the bike and then being able to walk off of it and do something else.
And the sad part is if he had made it to 44 calories, he would have traveled back to 1955.
That's true.
And where he would be the fuck his mom.
So that would have happened. Unfortunately, it didn't.
Yes,
but,
unfortunately,
just flaming skid marks where the assault bike was.
But meanwhile, that's why unfortunately he didn't podium, because he was slowly fading away out of a picture the whole time. But thankfully,
I can't grab the.
But thankfully, he did get the opportunity to invent rock and roll, so it's all good.
So everything ended up okay.
And he is the true originator of the term "Dirty Sanchez."
That's
I'll let you figure out exactly where
when
and
it
how.
came up. Yeah, it happened.
Anyway, so. Yeah, it was a really good weekend. I think overall it was cool, and I'm really excited to see what they end up doing over the next couple of years, because I think their move to Madison has a lot of potential.
Yeah.
Overall, I think it was a really good move.
I liked seeing kind of cool. I loved the strongman event. I thought that was really fun. I thought that was such a wonderful. Something we haven't talked about enough on this podcast is what's appealing about just an elegantly designed workout, where you see like immediately you look at the movements, and after a few seconds you're like, oh, I get it. Clever, it's like even when I'm in the gym and I'm trying to put together my own workouts, like they have to have a kind of elegance to them. So it's like, well, this will descend by reps of 5, and this will increase by reps of 5, and then they'll meet in the middle on the last round, and I'm like, now it's a workout. It has, because like
no one wants to do like 23, 17, 8.
Exactly. Like I even hated at the games when they're like, and the next round is 13 reps. I'm like, bullshit. First of all, make it 14, and the next round should be 7. Okay. That's how this shit needs to happen, all right? But the elegance of workouts, but not just in terms of numbers, but also in terms of conceptual stuff. Like we talked about at regionals, it was a workout. It's like, oh, they're doing lunges, and then they're doing wall ball shots, and then they're doing rope climbs. It's like ascending. I get it. And so what I loved about that workout is you took these two opposing elements, strongman, and then a skilled gymnastics movement. And if you're moving in one direction, it's strongman, and but you can't take everything in one trip, so you have to move back. But if you move the other way, you have to move with gymnastics.
Yeah.
So it was like this wonder. It had this opposition of movement, which was beautiful, but then opposition of two modalities and two skill sets that would advantage two different types of athletes. And so it was just a perfect, elegant workout that just like it communicates an idea. It was like a little work of art in itself, and I was really nice about that.
I 100% agree. I think overall the programming is probably some of the best we've ever seen.
Yeah.
I think another example of that, maybe a slightly more subtle example of that, is like, imagine you have the CrossFit Games, right? Imagine you're planning the CrossFit Games. You're like, fuck, I have the 40 best and the 40 best men, 40 best women CrossFitters for 4 days.
Yeah.
What do I do with them?
Yeah.
Right? And so an example of, I think, a really elegant workout would be the run, swim, run. Mile and a half run, 500 meter swim, mile and a half run. That workout, you can double it, you can cut it in half, and every variation of it is going to have a different set of winners, right? But that version of it, basically a 5K run and a 500 meter swim, is just so well put together that it kind of punishes people who don't spend enough time in that like endurance world, and it punishes people who just pain cave their way through like 20 or 30-minute AMRAPs, and it also punishes people who are too much in that cardio world and can't push the pace on both of those events. So it's a really interesting, like, it really is like a CrossFit combo of that like duathlon, as opposed to just doing, you know, a longer thing. You know, I thought that was a really smart move to make it those distances. And I also heard that the 500 was actually a little bit longer. It was probably closer to like 6 or 650.
That makes sense.
Armin,
good.
Did you see that latest BSD post, Ben Smith's dad?
About what? About
Fikowski's mom.
About Fikowski's mom? Yeah, I saw it. Ben Smith's dad's very funny. Not the actual Ben Smith's dad.
No. But
BSD,
a funny person.
Yeah. BSD is quite funny. He had this whole thing about with Fikowski going on, like, you know, that some American is going to beat him and this and that. And, well, some American did beat him, just not not Ben Smith.
How do we feel about the cyclocross?
How do we feel about the cyclocross,
how do we feel
Kyle?
about it?
I feel like you have feelings.
It was I did not watch on the day, but I was watching some heats now, and it was nice and kind of dull to watch for me personally. I know some people fell down, and you know, I didn't particularly like it. What are your thoughts, Armin?
I thought it was okay at best. I think it was an interesting idea. I think it's one of those things that's only going to be better if they do it again, right? And one of the things to me that I know a lot of people don't agree with me, but to me, I thought that they needed to find a way to make the playing field more level. And what I mean by that is there are people who got penalized because their bikes chains popped off. And that, I think, is like an unfair moment, right? That's a really shitty thing to do. It happened to Carrie Pierce. Her bike like fucking disintegrated in the middle of one of her laps, and she had to walk it.
The entire bike disintegrated.
And it turned and
that was her finish.
She ended up getting the chain back on because she just like, people were like yelling instructions at her. And they kind of thought that through. They put 2 points, 1 point at the very top in the middle and 1 point at the bottom right before the finish line for each lap, where you could pull over and exchange your bike for a new bike. But you can only move in one direction. And if your bike falls apart, you have to carry it to that moment. So you basically get last place. And so I thought that you know, the fact that we're not bicyclists, you know, if it is a human error thing that the chain's popping off, then we shouldn't be like, they shouldn't be
held accountable for being able to execute that.
The organization needs to account for that and clear that as a possibility, because that makes a huge difference. It makes a really big difference. Other than that, I thought the event was fine. You know, I think I
didn't see Camille's crash. I haven't watched
it. It was
the video
during
yet.
the practice run, I think.
Practice run.
Interesting.
You know, I would have liked to see. My thing is like, what makes CrossFit, right? It's the mixing of
Instagram.
things.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go
also
ahead.
Instagram. It's the mixing of things. Like a one rep max snatch is fucking awesome, and they should do that no matter what. They shouldn't mix that. Well, like, they can mix it with other things, but like it's fucking
Swimming.
awesome. But like, what I would have liked to see is, imagine if it was still 3 rounds of that course, but it was Fran. 21-21 a lap, 15-15 a lap, 9-9 and a lap, and then suddenly you're just adding some other thing to it that's like much more
thrusters with the bike.
Yes,
bike thrusters, sure, with your teeth.
Yes.
Just wrap your dick in that chain and fucking run it.
Legless rope climbs while holding the bike between your legs.
It's legless because you're carrying the bike with you. You're strapped into the bike.
That's right.
So, you know, that's what I would
completely agree.
To see,
I like seeing those elements get like, I loved back in the day, you know, mixing, you know, swimming with bar muscle ups, you know, because that felt so much more like CrossFit to me than you know, to use it as an element within a workout versus just seeing their capacity strictly at swimming sprints in a pool, which, while fun, is just, again, not it's just not it's less flattering to the athletes involved, certainly, but also just feels less CrossFit-y.
I think the best water event that they've ever done was the beach event in 2014. It was
right.
swim, burpees, thrusters, swim, thrusters, burpees, swim. That's a fucking terrible
or what was the one? What was the one where it was swim, run, and then into basically like a bunch of Cindy and it was Murph. Yeah, that was that. Okay, yeah, okay.
It was like a 200. That was more like just Murph with like a 200-meter swim buy-in.
Yeah,
but at that point, none of them ever swam.
So
they were just completely caught off guard by the idea that they had to be in the water. They provided fins for people that year.
Yes. Oh, right. Fins. I remember the fins thing. What do they need to bring back? Those paddle boards. That's what they need to bring back.
Yeah.
Oh shit! Yeah, we haven't seen real rowing yet. That's one thing we
did not see real rowing.
With those, with the lakes, a nice even lake.
You didn't want to just see a bunch of CrossFitters falling out of boats.
Oh God, Camille dislocated his shoulder, falling into water.
I get it.
She hasn't even made it to the lake yet. She just the boats fell on her. Oh no, I am underneath these boats. She's Russian again.
Underneath these boats.
I have the perfect event, you guys.
Let's hear it.
One cyclocross lap. Then you have to put your fucking bike on a canoe, row it across the lake. Another cyclocross lap.
But you and the bike and the scorpion can only be in the boat at the same time.
That's what I was gonna say. They need to create that like chicken wolf bike or boat problem, and that's just the thing.
That's true. Those are two different parables. There's the one about not trusting the scorpion. And there's the one that was an actual like brain teaser years ago where it's like you have like what was it? You have like a wolf and you have a chicken and something else and they like if the wolf is in the boat with the chicken, it eats that, but you can't have this in the boat with something. There was like a third element, wasn't it? And you had to figure out how many boat trips across would it take to
that's what they need to do. They need to put in a brain teaser, a 1940s-esque brain teaser.
Exactly.
And speaking
but with
of which,
actual wolves.
That's right.
Somehow with 3 jugs of water that have to be placed in the end.
Yes.
Well, how else do you know they finish?
That's right.
The thing about Madison.
Simon Says.
Simon Says.
The thing about Madison is it's not in California.
Bullshit.
Hard to believe. And therefore, the crowd, not a bunch of Californians.
No.
Which was really interesting to be surrounded by not people from L.A. at the CrossFit Games.
Were they not all shredded?
Who was the audience made up of?
The audience was made up of what you would imagine. People from places like Wisconsin.
Yes.
And other Midwest. Other Midwestern states.
So
were they
like
full of
CrossFit
cheese?
Audience.
They were full of shirts.
Oh, yes.
I saw one shirtless dude, and he was inside the Coliseum, and I just wanted to fucking punch him in the ear. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
So you're saying that they were like normal people.
They were normal people. They were normal, non-shallow people. It was shocking to me how normal the crowd was.
Do you have feelings on LA?
You are from there.
Yeah, I was. Yeah. I'm one.
Were you the one guy without his shirt on?
I want to punch myself in the ear. You're stupid. I hate you. Why are you doing this? I am one of the few people that was actually born and raised in the city of Los Angeles, and we're good. I think we're good.
Yeah. That is interesting. I just assumed that culture would just follow the games wherever it went.
No. Apparently that culture didn't give a shit.
How was the temperature there?
It was actually okay. So the first couple days it rained in the mornings. One of them, the first day on Thursday, it rained so badly that they have a CrossFit Games app, and so they were sending out like, we're canceling outdoor events due to severe weather, and I think part of that is that you can't swim when there's thunderstorms. So they had to pull people and stop people while there were thunderstorms, and then by like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, though, it was like bright and sunny, because that's never happened, and so they pulled people back out. So that happened like Thursday. It was like really rainy in the morning.
I wonder if that's why those events are isolated on individual days, so they have hours to fall back into,
Probably.
in case of weather. So it's like why you have the swim, run, swim, and then the next day you have the cyclocross. Were those were on the same day or different days?
Swim, run, swim, cyclocross was same day.
Same day, okay. Yeah, but at least there's more room in there.
Luckily, the grass, the cyclocross path dried out relatively well. By the time that they got out there, otherwise it would have been pretty slick and dangerous, I'd say. But otherwise, they were fine. And then the next day it rained a little bit as well, but they didn't really do a ton of stuff. That was the O course day, and it was more like just a little damp as opposed to really rainy. So it didn't really slow them down that much. It slowed them down enough that they had to be cautious, like they would slip off some of the implements. But overall, the weather was actually pretty good. The temperature-wise, that's the temperature you want. You don't want it to be fucking 95 degrees or 105 degrees. You want it to be like 70 degrees so that they can actually perform well.
Yeah.
It's just the rain kind of slows things down.
So what you're saying is the CrossFit Games should not move to Austin, Texas during the summer.
Fuck no.
Should not.
Oh my God. We've had like 100 days of 100 degrees.
We have. I went to Whole Foods for lunch, and I was just driving, and it's mild because it rained the last couple of days, and I remember just thinking, man, it is so much nicer. Like I'm not driving I'm not like trying to like park my car like at a stoplight, but like under a tree at the same time, like drive like just anything. Like I'm not freaking out while just driving to lunch. And I thought, it's so much better. And I looked, and it's like, it's only 90 degrees right now. That's why. Well, and it's amazing the difference between. And for those of you who do not live in Texas, you wonder, once it gets 97, 98 degrees, can you really feel the difference between that and 105? Yes.
Yeah.
You sure can.
Yeah.
It makes going outside just fucking madness. Like you just go outside and then you're kind of panicking from the moment you get out there, even if you're in your car, to the moment you get somewhere else that has air conditioning, and you're always sweating all day.
Yeah.
Stinky butts
Everywhere.
and balls.
I mean, your taint is going to be just ooey gooey.
Yes, that's why I felt
day
that
long.
my car seat is just a pile of Gold Bond powder that I sit in. That I just sit in, and it forms a little crevasse for me to sit in with a little nook from a beanbag right there. Testicles.
Just a big old.
I was wondering why you get naked every time you get into your car.
Yeah.
That is 100% what Gold Bond is
Gold
for.
Bond is just
not the foot powder,
just the ball powder.
Not the foot powder, the gold one, the blue one, the blue-green one.
If you
that's
put
the
the other
powder.
one on, if you put the wrong one on, it will turn your dick into a foot.
Yeah.
So you will grow a toenail on the end of your penis.
Only a few people like that.
That could be interesting for some uses.
Yeah. Like picking stuff out of your teeth.
Exactly. Picking stuff out of other people's teeth.
I know there's a reason I've been working on my flexibility.
That's right. But yes, Gold Bond is entirely invented probably by Duke Gold Bond, who was a Texan who was like, my balls are so sweaty.
So sweaty.
Like, there's nothing quite as satisfying though as that moment where like you kind of like just cough some Gold Bond into your hand and just like slap it on your balls, and then you put the Gold Bond down on your counter and like poofs up, and you're like, yeah,
that's right.
We did work, buddy.
Yes. And you're just like, I feel just like LeBron James.
Take a breather. I think is a perfect sound effect.
That's the sound of
Gold
that's
Bond.
the sound of smooth dry balls.
That's right.
Anyway, so that was the games. I think there's probably something else. Some Masters athletes saved another Masters athlete life from drowning. That was pretty cool.
Neither of them were Chris Spieler, so
who cares? Speaking of which, the men's 35 to 39 podium was basically like hashtag CrossFit Games 2013.
I know.
I didn't see it at all.
Neil Maddox, Chris Spieler, and
Kyle Kasperbauer won.
Yeah.
Neil Maddox got second, and Chris Spieler got third. It was awesome.
I was wondering what happened to that guy.
Kyle Kasperbauer had shoulder surgery. And then was 1 year, and then was sick 2 years in a row for the Open. So 2 years in a row, 3 years in a row, he couldn't really even try and qualify.
Should have been taking more D3.
Yeah, that was the problem.
Yeah, but wasn't Kyle Casper? Maybe I'm confusing him with someone else, but wasn't Kyle Kasperbauer the guy who knocked Spieler out of a regional spot for like the first year that Spieler didn't make it to regionals, or am I confusing Kyle?
I think you're confusing him with someone else.
Okay, then I guess
it could have been, but I don't think so.
Yeah.